to the second season of our Race and Reconciliation virtual town hall series. The Race and Reconciliation Initiative was started roughly a year ago in August of 2020 to carry out the charges handed down by the Chancellor and Board of Trustees to study TCU's relationship with slavery, racism, and the Confederacy. This is merely the second step. We're in the second year of a 5-year plan that the provost has authorized, whereby we're going to take our time to flesh out the 3 key windows in time as articulated in our Operation Triangulation format that you can find on our website. Suffice to say, for this year 2 in our 5-year plan, we're very interested in opening up horizontally the window in time focused on the founding years from 1861 to 1891. The first year that we were in operation, we necessarily focused on the African-American experience. It is very difficult, as you can appreciate, to talk about slavery, racism, or the Confederacy without invoking the history of African-Americans. And we also wanted to honor all the nameless, faceless social justice warriors who brought this attention to a national head, especially in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder. Tatiana Jefferson, Sandra Bland, the list is indeed too long. That being said, this year we're looking to expand our window horizontally to better include and incorporate the stories of our Native American brothers and sisters and our Latinx brothers and sisters. After all, how can we talk about history in the state of Tejas without incorporating our Latinx experience? And so as we move forward, we wish to clarify that we are an academically based, research, historically focused initiative. While the RRI does not perform the functions of other offices, such as the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, we will indeed direct questions outside of our scope to those appropriate parties for proper attention. But allow me to state that as we move forward along the path of reconciliation, we are indeed working very closely with Aisha Torres-Swear and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to better institutionalize the key recommendations that the Board of Trustees unanimously approved in April of 2021. You can find those key recommendations online on their website. Simply go to tcu.edu/RRI. Additionally, if you have any questions about how to get involved, how to tell your story, or simply to find out all the good things that good people are doing on our campus in the name of reconciliation, feel free to drop us an email at rri@tcu.edu. Speaking of good people doing good things, we are going to start today with the first of a series of 5 that will essentially go around our university campus, as we're going to listen to all 10 of our colleges, and we're going to pair them throughout the course of the year and listen to various representatives, whether it be staff, faculty, or students, talk about the pivotal and primary question on our minds, which is, what does reconciliation mean to you? Starting off this series, or should I say kickstarting off this series, we are pleased to host the John V. Roach Honors College and also the TCU and UNTHSC School of Medicine. Before we bring out those individuals, we have to bring out the individual who will be moderating. Unfortunately, as many of you may know, I'm a diehard Eagles fan, and by way of history, this past Monday, a travesty occurred in Dallas, of which I won't speak about in much detail, but suffice to say, I lost my voice. And so it's only fair that we bring in somebody else to help moderate this discussion properly while I lick my wounds. And so before I bring on this person, I just want to give one last commercial, if you would. I will come back at the end to provide a couple more announcements, but one piece I want to say at the onset, in case you have to be going for lunch, is that if you have not already, do check out the Clark Brothers statue, because if you do, it's unmistakable. You will see a mural. RRI and many students, and with the leadership of Professor Danjian, has added color to the canvas plane. And I believe this is the beautiful work of reconciliation. And so I would encourage you to go check that out, because indeed, more than just being performative, there are many things happening, perhaps some hidden in plain sight, but there are many things happening in the name of reconciliation that we wish to highlight. And so now, I believe is the moment we've all been waiting for. It is now time for us to call to this Zoom stage none other than the mellifluous, the marvelous, and the magnificent Mr. Perkins. And again, Mr. Perkins, do not shake your head. Do not shake your head, because, ladies and gentlemen, before I silence my not microphone, but my camera, I just want us to say that no disrespect to Lady Gaga, but a star is born in Mr. Perkins here. No, I'm trying to tell you, because isn't this the work of reconciliation, that our youth, our campus community is able to rise up once given the opportunity, show, improve, and be able to facilitate this idea of healing? We all were in awe about how his rocket ship took off. And the thing is, there's so many more individual stories like this that we need to add on to our story. And I'm so very glad, for example, to give a shout out that we can add to our list of Miss Amy Seniceros, who's down with the team, rocket ship taking off, Dr. Greensword, you know, she is, my whole crew, Karen Still, again, we're about it. And again, we would love for you to be able to join us as we continue down the path to reconciliation. Mr. Perkins.
Dr. G, as always, truly, truly appreciate the introduction, as well as being able to work alongside you in this wonderful journey of reconciliation. Before I have the pleasure of introducing our guests, I want to first thank you all for coming, attending us through your lunch hour. You could have been anywhere in the world or anywhere in Zoom land, but you decided to spend it with us. For that, we appreciate that. Just some quick announcements. If you check out our website, as Dr. G has mentioned, we'll see a couple updates and spruces. We have the collection of all of last year's virtual town hall meetings. So if you missed any meeting, or you want to go back and refresh, or there was one thing or one presenter that said something that really sparked your interest, all of those virtual town hall meetings will be accessible through our website, and we'll link back to the TCU YouTube page. Our podcast, season 2, is out. The first episode was released last Wednesday on 9/22, and the next episode, featuring Dr. Sylviane Greensword, will be released on October 14th. That is a very, very interesting and very, very entertaining episode. You will do not want to miss it. We have a lot of ways that we'll be engaging students this year. So keep a lookout on the ways in which students, faculty, staff, and alum can be involved in what reconciliation means for the TCU community. With that being said, now I would like to introduce our wonderful guests. Guests, as I call your name, please turn on your cameras, and then I will re-invite Dr. G back on the stage to start us off with some questions. So, coming from the John V. Roach Honors College, we have visiting lecturer, Dr. Andrew Ryder. Dr. Ryder, thank you for joining us today. And coming from, the new Associate Dean of the TCU and UNT School of Medicine, she has just as much style as she does grace, Dr. Lisa McBride. And as our guests are turning on their cameras and microphones as we prepare, I just want to welcome you all to think about some of these questions for yourself as well. These are institutional questions, but they're also very much individual questions that we have to ask ourselves and position ourselves when we're talking about the work of reconciliation. With that being said, Dr. G, I turn the mic over for you to lead us in our first questions, and then I'll follow up as well.
So just as starting off, why don't we just do a general introduction as to what it is that you do and your place and positionality within the proverbial TCU universe.
I'll go ahead and go first. I am, again, Lisa McBride. I am the not only the Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion, but also a Professor of Medical Education, and I'm actually the inaugural Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the School of Medicine.
My name is Andrew Ryder. I'm a visiting lecturer at the Honors College. I also teach courses for CRESS, Comparative Race and Ethnic Studies.
Excellent, excellent. So as Dr. G logs back out, I'll take over from here. So feel free to kind of jump in on any of the questions. So the first one is this: what does reconciliation mean to you, and how does reconciliation inform your professional work?
Okay, reconciliation for me is about learning to recognize and value the people around you for the individuals that they truly are, and helping them to be the person they were meant to be, and not the distorted understandings that are produced by unjust histories.
Hmm.
I also think that project, the project of reconciliation, is transformative for yourself, or for myself, as well as for your perceptions of others. It's part of the process of becoming who you are. In terms of racial reconciliation, I draw from Gloria Anzaldua's notion of cultural mestizaje, which suggests that we don't necessarily have fixed identities on the basis of our ancestry, but we benefit from seeing the world from different cultural perspectives. In teaching, I like a community building method to encourage students to reflect on their own experiences, in writing and in small group discussions, to learn from one another within a culture of reciprocal cooperation. This facilitates new encounters that go beyond first impressions and shorthand assumptions.
Oh, thank you. Excellent. Dr. McBride, I'll offer you the same question.
Well, thank you. And I first want to say thanks for including the School of Medicine. Absolutely. On behalf of our founding dean, Stuart Flynn. So thank you. But for me, reconciliation encompasses truth telling. I mean, which is a big thing for me, coming from a little town called Ferguson, Missouri, which you probably have heard of when you talk about reconciliation that's needed, and also sharing of historical narratives or dialogue to transform relationships amongst groups affected by injustice, inequality, and of course, who have been harmed, like in my dear beloved Ferguson, Missouri. We are a broken world craving for healing, and so reconciliation allows us to heal the wounds of the past so that we can build mutually respectful relationships across racial and ethnic lines. So to honor and value one, it means that you are in the process of reconciliation. The one thing that I will say about the School of Medicine, since its inception, we aspired to train compassionate, empathetic, and humble physicians. And so I believe that these young people are well positioned to take part in the reconciliation process in medicine, which we know is greatly needed. So thank you.
Absolutely. And what I really appreciate is that, both of your answers center the individual in this process of reconciliation, of understanding where you are and your positionality, the relationships you have with others. So I think that's very impactful as we kind of build on this conversation as an institutional campus-wide, but the individual, it all starts with the individual. So I think that's a kind of a good segue to our second question. How do you view your college's relationship to the largest campus community?
Okay, well, so some of the goals of the John V. Roach Honors College are to promote self-discovery, critical thinking, and conscientious understanding of world cultures through rigorous academic endeavors and creative inquiry in the context of big questions, great ideas, and relevant issues that transcend the curriculum. So we have an interdisciplinary approach. So naturally, we draw from methods and knowledge produced by other departments in the university. So I've done collaborative work, especially with the Spanish department, and to some degree with dance. And I've also drawn from dialogue with professors in the philosophy department and with biologists, actually, to some degree. For my classes, I've also been able to receive attributes from Middle Eastern studies, from women and gender studies, and from comparative race and ethnic studies and religious traditions. And I've made an effort to teach classes outside the Honors College, specifically for CRES. The Honors College draws from other departments here at TCU, and I think we give back by creating a space where students can address broad, general questions of humanistic inquiry.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dr. McBride.
Well, for the School of Medicine, the community is critical. Dean Flynn always talks about, as a member of the School of Medicine, we have to aspire to be good citizens of our Fort Worth community. Most of our students come from various parts of the United States. So that's a critical thing for the School of Medicine to, create partnerships with the Fort Worth community. And so the first thing that we did is create learning communities. And these learning communities facilitate small group vertical level communities that foster and advocate and support a sense of belonging and community engagement for our medical students. And so just briefly, these learning communities are led by our physician development coaches who are clinicians, and our students get the great opportunity to partner with city leaders to work with and impact the citizens of Fort Worth. Now, this was intentional what we did in terms of the community. We knew the local level health indicators, most notably around life expectancy and infant and maternal mortality rates. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize this being Black maternal mortality week, when we see 6 times the rate of not only infant and maternal mortality highlighted in our Fort Worth community. We wanted to be intentional, and I think that's critical to say as a school of medicine. We wanted to focus in on those communities that showed a clear evidence of disparity in healthcare, and mainly faced by people of color. So these learning communities are in the East Side, Stop 6 area, the Diamond Hill area, Como and North Side areas. So again, if you look at just the infant mortality rate in those communities, there's 6 times that of all of Fort Worth. So yes, the community plays a tremendous role in what the School of Medicine has done. And so these projects have created back to school supply drives, virtual blood drives. We've collected PPE for these communities, and we actually have led school-wide reading initiatives for these communities. So we have more work to do, and we want to be good citizens of our Fort Worth community.
Absolutely. And I think both of you said something very similar in this idea of collaboration and the important need to make sure that you're collaborating across lines, across different communities, and also different hands. One thing that is kind of central to what we believe reconciliation is that many hands make the load light. And we are able to pull in people who have like-minded, may not have the same way of going about it, but they have a skill attribute or a desire to make sure that this work is done using as many people as possible does in fact make the work more efficient. So I do appreciate you all kind of listing out some of the ways in which you are collaborating in your work. Though we've talked about some of the things that make this work doable, there are also a lot of ways in which we're constantly trying to improve. So if you could, what areas of your college are you looking to improve your efforts of reconciliation or of the work, some of the work that you have listed?
Yeah, well, I don't think we fully mirror the diversity of Fort Worth yet. Although I'll talk more about diversity things we're working on. I would like to have more of a connection to the broader culture of the city. So I've made an effort to do that through work that I've done with UNTHSC, which is a capoeira school that teaches about Brazilian culture. Capoeira is an Afro-Brazilian martial art. There's actually going to be a performance of it this evening, which I hope some of you can attend. Yes. So I work with that group, and they have a very broad and diverse community, and I'm able to get to know a lot of people from outside TCU through that activity. So yeah, Lindsay Puente, she's the person who's giving the presentation this evening. I'm also trying to establish links with more local churches on issues of reconciliation in Fort Worth today. COVID has made it kind of harder to go out and establish new links, but I do work with a Methodist church nearby, and I'm hoping to eventually draw from their resources to kind of connect TCU more with the rest of Fort Worth.
Yeah.
As it relates to the School of Medicine, obviously we're a new school, but we're really trying to make, impactful relationships in Fort Worth. And one of the ways that, we're bringing awareness to our students is a particular engagement, community engagement, as well as with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion that I have the pleasure of leading, is we joined in July with the Helping Hands for the Homeless. And we hosted the first pop-up care village event in July. And this wouldn't be possible without our clinicians, our providers, Dr. Capper and Dr. Bonnell. I just need to give them a shout out because they provided with our students and delivered critical care services, not only critical care services, but our students provided purses, diapers, care packages for approximately 580 persons at this event. So when you talk about restoration, you want to repair and bring dignity to those who may not have a place to call home. And as it relates to the new School of Medicine, again, one of the things that I feel like our college could really focus in is to know and not to have isolated mention of health inequalities. That's just merely not enough. And so instead, we need to focus in on sort of those social drivers needed to be woven into the fabric of our medical school. Again, we're only in our third year. We just ushered in our class of 2025. And so we know we have work to do because we actually want, and we know as a sort of as a patient that you all are, we need physicians who understand health inequality and who understand the impact of societal factors like racism and how it has grown acutely clear, even by our leading governing body, the Association of the American Medical Colleges, the UNTHSC, which is sort of advances related medical education. So Dean Flynn, back in 2019, challenged me to work with Osmosis, which is a health educator platform, to develop a 3-part series on the history of racism in academic medicine. And that sort of pilot is now being infused in our first year curriculum, but we know we have so much more to do. And so we've been working with sort of a faculty curriculum development model that's used by Tufts School of Medicine that we want to roll out so that we can expand our curriculum and also focus in on what I call the structural competency, those elements, downstream elements that affect health and illness when you talk about social, political, and economic structure. So I'm gonna leave the mic right there because that's a handful, but we know that in health, zip code and social and political economic structures can impact your health. So thank you.
And so, Dr. McBride, I want to ask a follow-up, and then Dr. Ryder, I'll offer you the same question. When you're doing this work, when you're out there and you're incorporating this labor of love into your daily, right? The P word of performative sometimes gets thrown around when we're doing this work. So I want to ask you all, how do you go about grappling with this idea or this notion that people can see your work as performative? And then to that as well, how are you all bridging with the community so that it's not from a condescending, I'm here, or this white savior complex, like we're here to save the city of Fort Worth from this evil or this notion of that you can't do well without us. So like, it's kind of a two-pronged question, but I think they're both very much related of, how do you answer to this idea of your work being seen as potentially performative, but also how are we bridging gaps with communities in a very genuine, compassionate way in which we're just trying to perform a labor of love in this idea of community and humanity?
I can go first if you'd like me to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
right. Yeah.
And so one of the blessings I believe for myself working in another academic medicine institution as well as in undergraduate and graduate institutions, I get this every day. And so check the box. Are we just checking the box? And who holds me accountable is our students. I mean, we oftentimes have frank conversations in my office about this doesn't feel right. And so it really challenges me in my office. And then I challenge our dean to say that let's look at our accrediting bodies first, which I believe in medicine sort of is the roadmap. Now we have institutionalized in our accreditation standards by the LCME, which says that we will do at a high level diversity and inclusion and pipeline partnerships. It actually mentions a community engagement framework as well as integrating the trauma lens. And so first we have our standard 3.3. So that's the first thing. And then at the national level, the AAMC that I mentioned, they created a Center of Health Equity. And so they've laid out standards of how we should be integrating health equity framework, anti-racist curriculum, and other elements into our curriculum. And they don't just say, hey, go out and do it. They've created the curriculum and sort of the outcomes that we need to accomplish. And so that's why I'm really proud to be at a medical school, because we are creating and developing anti-racism curriculum, which, by the way, is significant in medical schools. So the fact that I can say that here today, Wednesday, that the School of Medicine is engaged in anti-racism curriculum development. And we're using, models by Tough School of Medicine, which has been doing this for a while in Boston. And so I think those are ways that we can engage the community, but also I want to go back to our learning communities. We were intentional. We wanted to pick parts of Fort Worth where the need was great and that we could be on the sideline, engaging with them in whatever capacity we can, whether it's going to a barbecue or whether it's providing, tutoring services or providing PPE. We're going in the homes of our community and we're sitting down and we're having iced tea and we're seeing them. It's not this invisibility or what I call invisibilized sort of interaction. And I'm using obviously Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man, because when you don't see people, right, and they don't feel heard, they're eventually going to lash out. So I'll leave that there and let my colleagues speak.
Okay, you'll have to excuse me. My son is homesick from school. He has a flu, so we've had some difficulty juggling this. So I practice these values in my own life. 10 years ago, I moved to the Palestinian territories to teach because I wanted to be helpful to marginalized people and because I wanted to learn from the experiences of people in contemporary Jerusalem and Bethlehem. Subsequently, I taught in Budapest, Hungary, and I worked with feminists, the LGBT community, and Roma and refugee communities in really difficult circumstances. Now I live in a Latino neighborhood, and most of the people I'm around socially are Latinos or Latinas or Black people. Another side of it, aside from my personal life, though, is I emphasize the activities of practical social movements in the world. So whether I'm pedagogically authentic is not really the main issue because I'm not the authority. It's about the students' encounters with indigenous movements across the Americas or Black Lives Matter or the Black Church. So it's not really a question of what I have to say about this, but rather Fred Hampton or Desmond Tutu or Patrisse Cullors or other people that we learn about in class. It's not talking for them, but talking along with them, and most importantly, letting them talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Ryder, if you need to step away, by all means, completely understandable. We are real people with real lives and real things happen. So by all means, if you have to step away, feel no pressure at all. So as we move forward, I kind of want to ask you all one last question about you and the relationship with your college, and then we're going to have a slow transition into DEI efforts in relation to RRI. So if you, in your mind, how would you envision a more equitable honors college or a more equitable medical school? Obviously, there's infinite amount of work that we can always do, and sometimes we want to shoot for the stars, but there's a process, right? And there's things that we have to do and things that we're trying to improve upon, we're trying to continue to work for. So the work is continual and continuous. So in your mind, how would you envision a more equitable medical school? And then Dr. Ryder, if you can, if not, we'll just pass on to the next one.
Well, thank you for that question. And obviously, as a new school, we have our struggles. And one of the things that I believe, just on a personal level, that would make the School of Medicine more equitable is to address the leaky pipeline as it relates to underrepresented populations in medicine. And that's underrepresented in terms of their relevance in the US Census. And so as I come before you today, I'm embarrassed to say that only 5.4% of physicians are African-American or Black. And of those, 2.6% are men of color, Black men in particular, and 2.8% women. And so I've made it sort of my life moral responsibility and commitment to get more Black men into medicine. And so that's sort of my personal thing that I get up every day saying, yes, Lisa McBride, you're going to get more men in medicine. And my office has sort of changed the narrative around that issue for the School of Medicine. I'm very proud of that with our admissions team. But then if you look at even your Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, Spanish origin, less than 6%. We have to do better. And even if you look at Native American or Alaskan Native, 0.6%. We have to do better. And at the School of Medicine, we've taken it upon ourselves to say, we're just not gonna just be in it, talk about it. We're going to be about it. And that means we partner with Hampton University, Howard University, SIU, Carbondale MedPrep, which is the oldest post-bac program in the country, and even with Tuskegee, and also with our Hispanic serving institutions. There's 96 in Texas. We haven't hit them all, but we have hit the largest for our partnership with Texas State University. So I believe that we can do better. And from our colleagues over at the main campus, hold us accountable. Let's produce and transform the Fort Worth, Dallas-Fort Worth area and have more underrepresented populations in medicine. We know that when you encourage minority physicians to get into the profession, they go back and serve their community, and that increases health outcomes for everyone. So thank you.
Dr. McBride, I just wanted to ask us a brief follow-up before I hand it over to Dr. Ryder. In your opinion, when we were speaking, I was kind of thinking about, what are some of the variables with these low statistics? And one of the things that I thought of is the lack of access to healthcare and the lack of access to healthy food items. So like this idea of healthcare is not readily accessible. So people are less likely to, particularly for the statistics that you've given and demographics you've given, are less likely to fall or follow that career path outside of the difficulty of becoming a physician, but just the lack of exposure to those professions in childhood, in development, in young adulthood. What would you say about that?
Well, I would say the first step for a school like the School of Medicine is to start early, right? If you never met a doctor, how can you aspire to be a doctor?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we've done is we created our Diversity and Inclusion Mentoring Network. And we have almost 100 doctors from the DFW area from our underrepresented populations, and they engage with our students as well as prospective students, and we get them engaged in not just, hey, this is an event, but we offer, sort of programming around health equity, health inequality issues so that we can engage them early on. But you have to really start, to be honest with you, in middle school. And that's why going into these communities, our learning communities, being there in middle schools, in the high schools, the Young Men Leadership Academy, want to give them a shout out, and the Young Women Leadership Academy, is those institutions that can change the narrative. And I believe that it begins early on. If you've never seen a doctor in Ferguson, why would you ever want to be a doctor? And I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely.
So if I can say a little bit about an equitable honors college. So part of global citizenship is local, because part of our state and our own city are multicultural, right? And part of self-discovery and understanding world culture is decolonization, because self-discovery and critical thinking involves dismantling legacies of white supremacy, which doesn't mean that you can just discard the traditional canon, but it does lead to a deeper and more concrete knowledge of historical and contemporary social movements. I think this is meaningful for people of color, but it's also liberatory for white people, because it helps us to overcome a false sense of self. I think anti-racism is not primarily about feeling guilty or inadequate, but it's actually empowering for white people as well as for people of color. I mean, I'm not saying like I've reached the highest level of reconciliation and I never make mistakes. Of course, I do make mistakes sometimes, but that's not like the norm. I think for the most part, so sometimes some versions of racism act like it's only about feeling bad and hopeless, and like white people can just never overcome their privilege or their biases. And I don't think that's totally true, because I think it's also enriching and valuable and enjoyable and sometimes fun. Anti-racism can be fun, sure, why not? It's not always fun, but sometimes it is. It gives you a sense of a better and more authentic sense of self and more joyful and authentic relationships with other people.
If you could just briefly, you said something very profound that I really want to go back to. You said the work of anti-racism is not about feeling guilty, but more so empowering. Can you just spend a little bit more time unpacking that just more?
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's empowering because you have different kinds of collaborative relationships with other people, right? And there's a sense that you're not necessarily limited to your own past or your own ethnic group or prejudices you've developed. People who remain trapped in their prejudices, that doesn't really make them happy. I know they might feel like, oh, I feel more comfortable with my own type of people or whatever, diversity is threatening to me, but that's not really to their benefit, right? Like actually learning about other cultures and participating with other people in a broader way, I think you really gain a lot from that, really. I don't really think you're losing or sacrificing anything, really, or you're only sacrificing illusions, things you never really had in the first place.
Wow, that was profound. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think that gives us a nice transition into our second part before we get into one of my favorite sections of that we're doing this year called the rapid fire. But before we get there, a big thing that we're doing this year, or a big thing that RRI is rooted in, is the idea of transparency before accountability. That having these very honest, raw conversations can allow us to tell us what direction do we need to move in, and what are some of the ways in which we've fallen short, and how can we build a better future. So in this part, I really want you all, and as you have been, to be very honest, be very transparent about some of these questions, because I think that allows us to have these open, honest conversations in order for us to build a better future, so that we may be accountable to who we said we are, not to who people believed us to be, or who we said we are, but we're not truly doing the work. So for the first question, what do you first think of RRI when you heard of it, and how did you hear of it?
Well, for me, I heard about the initiative as a member of the Chancellor's DEI committee. And when I heard about it, I was excited for our campus community. This is my second institution. And the last institution, I had the privilege of chairing that. And it's really transformational for persons individually as well as the institution. My Chickasaw grandmother used to say to me, you can't know where you're going, Lisa, until you know where you've been. And so I think that TCU is really beginning that process of, this is where we were and this is where we want to go. I'm also proud of Chancellor Boschini and the Board of Trustees. This is not something that every university is doing. So I want to, give a personal, I guess I could say shout out to the Chancellor and the board, if that's possible. And I'm also very excited about Dr. G. And I know he's an Eagles fan. Please don't beat him up, because I'm on his side with that one. I'm sorry. I'm glad he's chairing it, because I don't know anyone more passionate about this topic than Dr. G. And it's just an honor and pleasure to work with him. And he's been so gracious to give his time and his talents to the School of Medicine. So I'm excited about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought it was an excellent idea. I was also really glad to see Dr. G heading it, because I've been really impressed by his efforts and perspectives and his scholarship. I've read many of his books, and he's been gracious enough to give guest lectures for some of my classes. And so I've seen firsthand the impact he has on students. I was also excited to hear about it, because sometimes I teach about the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions in South Africa from a historical perspective. And so I think a lot about reconciliation. And I would sometimes say with students, what if we had a reconciliation commission like here in Texas? What would that look like? And so doing that on the university level, I was really intrigued and really excited to see how that would play out, or how it is playing out.
Yeah, and then I think that lends us to our next question of what encourages you on campus with respect to DEI. What gives you pause? And for me, you got to kind of answer my question is the leadership. Who's in the room? And to work directly under Dr. G, to have a leader who's energetic, way he goes about it's infectious, right? He gets people excited about this idea of reconciliation. So having leadership that moves and pushes the needle in a way that incorporates and includes all populations and people and gets them excited about doing this work, I think is a very, very important way. I don't want to answer up the question too much, but I just wanted to kind of echo some of the things that were said by our panelists about the leadership in which RRI has been taken under. But for you all, what encouraged you all about DEI efforts here, but also what gives you pause? What are you kind of hesitant about?
I think students are really open-minded and responsive to these issues. I think a lot of us are including greater ethnic diversity. This is a really difficult time historically because of the pandemic and because of the backlash to racial justice movements that's been taking place in the US and in Texas. There's also kind of a crisis of care labor taking place, where many of us have to kind of scramble to balance our family and work responsibilities in the absence of like really functioning social institutions. And so sometimes I'm concerned it might be difficult to support and to retain faculty of color, particularly women of color. TCU maybe could do more than that with that, but also, like, I feel like in the Honors College, I mean, a number of my colleagues like Juan Carlos Sola Carbacho, Miki Akagi teach on social justice issues. So Lynn's class on Beyonce. So I'm really pleased with the curricular efforts we've been doing, but I think it's difficult to deal with all the things that were all the problems that we've been hit with these last couple of years.
I would say that I'm very encouraged by just having this town hall and inviting the School of Medicine, but also inviting other colleges at TCU and having this as a year-long, additional year-long sort of initiative that will go forward. I'm predicting for the next 10 to 15 years. So I've already put that out in the universe. So hopefully that happens. I'm also, but I have to say that I have a sense of pause as well in whether or not we can build capacity and longevity with even this initiative. And I really want to see the students involved. Again, I want to just go back to the School of Medicine students. They really are the ones that are pushing and pushing and pushing the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to not only go and be on top, but go higher and not just be settling, just to say, hey, you know, we're doing one thing, we should be doing 10 things. And so I think I would love to see more students involved. And so that would be the only thing that would give me pause, because a lot of times we get faculty and staff, but I really think that the reason why we all get up in the morning is because of our students.
Absolutely. And so for this last question before we get over to rapid fire, do either of you struggle with resources to carry out your work?
For the most part, I have most of what I need to teach. I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding about the relationship between teaching and scholarship, where some people think that those things are like at odds. And if you're doing scholarship, that's like taking time away from teaching. I don't think that's true. Like a lot of my work really draws on research, and to continue to do a good job, I need to have, you know, time and space and support to learn more about indigenous cultures, because I write a lot about that, and a lot of that research hasn't been done. I'd like to learn more about Vietnamese Americans in Texas. So I think research. Generally speaking, I have what I need. Sometimes I think research materials could have a little bit of a boost, perhaps.
Okay.
As from the medical school's perspective, being a new school, obviously, we're still sort of trying to figure out our financial models. But what I found in my office is to be creative and to think outside the box by partnering with community organizations for collaboration and finance and financial support, like from CV Roman Medical Society, which is the oldest African-American medical society in the country, as well as the North Texas Latin American Physician Association and other organizations which have helped us even during when we talk about COVID. And we know that the sort of infection and deaths occur at a greater rate in our Black and Brown communities. Just last year, we hosted a roundtable with 5 United States Surgeon Generals. And these are the top docs of the United States. They work for Health and Human Services. Our current Surgeon General, Dr. Murthy, was also on that panel. And we use that as sort of a financial fundraiser so that we could then do the work for our students in terms of their interest groups. And so we had over 2,000 medical students, clinicians, and community leaders from 12 states come together. And we, again, use that as a way to, address our financial models. But we know this year, and we're hopeful, that the National Institute of Health also sees the need to address health disparities after the coronavirus. And so they've unleashed $100 million to research this topic. And so I'm making a prediction today under the leadership of Dr. G that the School of Medicine could create next year a COVID-19 Truth and Reconciliation Commission under the TCU RRI initiative. And just think, it would be the first in the country to really look at Tuskegee, the history of medicine and slavery, and bring it into the disparity of the COVID-19 vaccinations, as well as the infection and death rate. So stay tuned, waiting on Dr. G to call me.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Sheesh. Okay. So more to be said on that. So within this last 3 minutes, I would like to engage you all in this thing called rapid fire, in which I'll ask you all some fun related questions, still rooted in our idea of reconciliation, but allowing you all to say a little bit more about your personality depending on the answer. So the first one, and this is open to either one. If TCU were a movie, which movie would it be?
Wow, that's interesting. I am a big old movies girl, so I can't think of one, but I would go with, I'm gonna kick it to you, Andrew. I don't know if I have one that I can say right off the top of my head.
The first one I could think of was the Fast and the Furious movies, because why I have that impression, I have to think about, but because I feel like it's an exciting place with a lot of youthful energy that's sort of becoming more diverse, and where, yeah, I don't know why that immediately leapt to mind, but it's like TCU makes me think of the Fast and Furious movies. Those are really
with 8, 10, 12 different series.
Yeah, and it's epic. It goes on and on. So that's
on and on.
Yeah,
got you, Dr. Bro. I have one for you. This one might be a little bit easier. If TCU was a shoe brand, what shoe brand would it be?
Well, you know, shoes are my thing. Shoes and glasses are my thing. So I can't go with my favorite now, which would be Italian made. But so I will go with Air Force One. Michael Jordan's Air Force One, the initial brand, the number one, the first ones that came out.
The first one. Why do you say that?
The first ones because, I mean, you know, TCU's classic, right? Okay. They're classy, and so they're not going to have, you know, anything but the first edition of the Air Force Ones, right? But the reason why I picked sort of Michael Jordan and Nike's sort of branding is, let's just do it. Let's just get this race and reconciliation and do it well and be a model for other universities around the country. Let's not wait for the University of Virginia. Let's just do it, TCU. Let's do reconciliation the way that TCU does things. 5-star.
I like that. I like that. My second question, if you were chancellor for a day, what would you change first?
Can I be a little biased?
Go ahead.
I would have a 2 or 3 buildings being built for the School of Medicine, so that we could have, you know, all the latest and the greatest robotics and simulation equipment. But then the reality would set in, and I would say, you know, I would just want to get more underrepresented faculty and students to TCU main campus and School of Medicine. So I would put $30 million into that initiative for 10 years.
I would make a childcare facility for faculty and for staff.
Understandable. This will be our last one. This one might be a little philosophical, but I want you all to think about it. Give us an alternative metaphor for the frog fountain. So as you know, the frog fountain is in the middle of the commons, and the top fountain is supposed to represent the seniors, and the water drips down to the juniors, to the sophomores, to the first years, and that they're constantly pouring different knowledges as they've learned throughout their 4 years. So if you could think of an alternative metaphor for that frog fountain, what would it be? That's a tough one. And look, you got to take that up with Dr. G. I think he wrote these after the game was over Monday. So it came out of a little, little hurt. There's some hurt there maybe. So that's why the question is a very deep one. He was in a very deep place at this moment when he's writing these.
It could be about like spiritual development and like the hardship and overcoming what you thought were your limitations and becoming a higher version of yourself or something like that, I suppose.
Or it could be, sort of, I'm gonna play on the word restoration, that, you may come to TCU one way, but you will restore, and the water is flowing through you, so you can actually be, to actually go through sort of this restoration process that you need to, from going from a freshman So a senior and coming in from a first year medical student to a fourth year, we're hoping for growth. And so I'm seeing the water as flowing and calming, but calming in the sense that you're preparing yourself for greatness.
That's profound. So as we close out, I just want to thank both of our panelists for the time, energy, and effort of being here today. It means a lot to share the space with you all. So I thank you for that. And with that being said, I will turn the mic over to Dr. G.
Absolutely. And I'm so very appreciative to all of our panelists and their insights, particularly, being put on the spot with the rapid fire. Appreciate you for being good sports, but that's all part of this message, this idea that reconciliation is an uneven business. We have to think on our toes, we have to think on our feet. And so the bottom line is that when we talk about this idea of flowing and growing, I would like to just give a shout out to Brother Tony Igbokibi, who is absolutely doing big things in the medical school, in the School of Medicine. As Dr. McBride had mentioned, there's not that many brothers over there who are doing it big, but we just want to shine a light on those who are staying the course. And so we're very appreciative of that, and we want to absolutely give Igbokibi his props and his respect. But with respect to what is happening on campus, I just wanted to give a couple of announcements. My panelists, you're good. You're no longer on the hook. You can turn your cameras off. We appreciate you. We absolutely appreciate you, because they are representatives of this larger university effort to involve as many people as possible in the conversation of reconciliation. And so I thought it was only prudent that we share that there's a number of events that are ongoing by which many parts of our community are indeed taking steps towards reconciliation. So if you are interested later on today, feel free to stop by to check out the symposium on Afro-Latin American literature, history, and culture that is happening today. We just put the link in the chat for you to check that out. And again, the live capoeira performance is something you don't want to miss as well. A little bit later, we have the Native American and Indigenous Peoples Day Symposium taking place from October 4th through 5th. So that is also something that you do not want to miss out on. And we also just want to let you know that October 7th, there's the 2021 Diversity Day virtual conference. So when we talk about what's happening on campus, I would also be remiss not to mention what's happening off campus. And that final link is to a historical marker, a ceremony that's taking place on Friday, October 1st. What is very special about this ceremony is that it is actually, being fostered or headed up by Dr. Jennifer Giddings Brooks. If that name sounds familiar, it's only because this name is a very special part of TCU's history. Through the efforts of Dr. Greensword and others in our archival team, we were able to discover that she is indeed the first Black elected homecoming queen. And this year, in 2021, marks 50 years to the date in which she essentially blazed open this trail. And so on the 22nd of October, during homecoming weekend, we're pleased to announce that a portrait of Dr. Jennifer Giddings Brooks will be adorned and posted inside the D.J. Kelly Alumni Center. She will also be properly recognized during halftime of the game on the 23rd of October. And so I think these are the ways in which we're taking steps, right? First, we were talking about a number of faculty and students who just out of the labor of love started the portrait project, right? And Dr. Nino Testa and Jackie Lambies were definitely a part of that, to now to where a portrait is indeed in the Alumni Center, adding more color to the canvas plane as a result of the oral history project, as a result of us talking with one another and making sure that we're staying connected. And so to the extent that you are indeed interested in this idea of reconciliation, there is more than enough room. Reconciliation, you understand, is owned by no one, but it's something that can be shared by all. And so we are fortunate that you could join us in this discussion this afternoon, as we hope these town halls will continue to provide critical perspective and deepen understanding for what will ultimately push us forward and toward action and healing, or in other words, reconciliation. Because while we make no promises about what will happen in the future, what we do pledge to you is this: we are doing the best we can with what we have. Thank you, and may you continue to proceed down the path. Until next time.